Last night, protesters were outside a President Trump rally in Arizona while the president gave a lengthy off-the-script speech. The president defended his Charlottesville's comments, vowing to shut down the government and also to build the wall in Mexico and much more. Also, the New York Times is reporting that Senator Mitch McConnell believes that the president is unfit to salvage his presidency. Here now to discuss the recent events, we welcome now political organizer Lee Bynes, or I should say, and Bronx GOP Representative Nasir Muhammad. I should say Lee Bynes is the order of Retrovision Media and our political analyst, and so we want to thank you for coming and sharing with us.
Always glad to be here.
All right, we want to make sure we've got a good, Mr. Muhammad, thank you for coming and saying
Thank you.
As we look yesterday, Lee, I mean, obviously I had the opportunity to watch this speech, and I was kind of taken aback at how off the script it was. And in addition to, the president just seemed to be in, well, I would say rare form, but it seems like regular form for this. And looking and listening to what was being said, the tonality of what was, or the tone that was being really spoken of, really left a lot of people shaking their heads and asking the question whether or not we're going to see effective government.
Short answer, doubtful. You know, the speech the president gave the other night, as far as the Afghanistan issue was concerned, it was fully scripted. He stayed on message. He never took his eye off the ball with regards to the message. And a lot of people, it raised a lot of hopes for what was going to happen the next day. People were thinking, well, maybe this is a turning point for the president. Maybe he's seen the errors of his ways over the last week and how much turmoil that he was pretty much responsible for. But he went back to vintage Trump. He went back into serious campaign mode, and he pretty much destroyed any goodwill that he could have built up over the last couple of days by going back to where he was. He pretty much brought back a lot of those haunting feelings that a lot of people had about him, about his message, about the people that he was speaking to, because I'm talking about ruby red meat that he was throwing to those crowds, talking about the wall, talking about the possibility of pardoning Sheriff Aparo, one of the most I don't want to say it, but racist individuals in that region of the country.
Mr. Muhammad, give me a little bit about this here from the GOP perspective. Obviously, a lot of concern because you've got a president that now is making these comments, but yet and still you have the GOP on some side. Many are starting to distance themselves. You heard what Mitch McConnell says, that he doubts if the president can save his presidency. Do you agree with him?
Well, I did hear that, but you have to take into consideration that Donald Trump won with a constituency that was outside of the mainstream or the establishment Republican Party. So he's defending the people that actually elected him, and they were at odds with the Washington Republican establishment. So to expect him to move mountains to get his agenda legislated would be asking the Republican establishment of Washington to adopt his program, which all indications are that they wouldn't, because he got elected from people who were against what the Republicans were doing. So Donald Trump was vintage campaigner Donald Trump. I don't think you should expect much. Donald Trump would have to go out and get his acolytes, his Republicans that are campaigning for office. He'd have to get them elected. They would have to move through the Republican or Washington, D.C. establishment by gaining seniority and chairing committees and subcommittees before you can actually really expect him to get an agenda. And that would probably bring him to close to his end of his term or the beginning of the next term.
But you know what, I'm not really sure how well he's going to get anything done, and that's what I opened this statement with. It's highly doubtful, simply because last night he went out of his way to cut his own throat by going after, he didn't say it, the names, the people's by name, but he definitely did infer that John McCain was the reason why health care was stalled on his watch. He was definitely calling out, I got the names right here, Susan Collins and Bob Corker, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, Jeff Flake, et cetera. These individuals have been are going to be absolutely critical to him getting anything done. And by him going after his own party as opposed to going after Democrats, it's literally mind-boggling. So we'll leave that word off the table.
Well, let me go back to Charlottesville, because in his speech yesterday, he did defend the Charlottesville comments. He did say that, but he did omit the side, saying that many sides were to blame. What are we to make of the president and saying that, yeah, listen, I stand by what I say, but on the other side, he also omits some stuff?
Oh, and that was probably the critical issue that we're talking about, is the fact that he could not find it within himself to separate the two sides. His statement that there was a fault on both sides, most of the nation would realize that anybody that's walking down the street carrying a swastika or waving the Confederate flag and making Nazi salutes is going to there's going to be some pushback, and most of the nation realizes that if you are pushing back against a message of hate like that, there really is no two sides to any argument. The fact that they had a candle, not a candlelight, but a torch light march on Friday night, that should have been the precursor. Saturday should not have happened. Mm-hmm. The following day should not have happened. The city of Charlotte, the mayor, the police, they're under a lot of pressure right now because they did not take Friday night as a warning for what was going to happen on Saturday. You
spoke earlier about the Republican Party working with the president. I want to ask a question, because he talks now about he'll shut the government down if the wall is not built. When you talk about shutting government down, there's a lot of effects that really come. Somewhere along the line, he's going to have to work with the GOP party, and the GOP party is going to have to work with the president. Agree?
I agree. I think that these are actually opening salvos in a strategy to mark their territory. Now, Mitch McConnell, as GOP Senate leader, majority leader, he has his work cut out in trying to get enough votes from the people he represents, from the other Republican senators, in order to pass legislation. And in order to do that, the Washington Republican establishment would have to make various compromises. If he can't get his members to close the gap between what Donald Trump and his administration is proposing and what the Republicans in his conference, the ones that actually have a constituency back home that they have to really please in order to stay in office. So there's a gap, and it needs a lot of work in order to really close that gap. It's possible. They would both have to really see where the negotiating positions are and try to narrow.
I think
the difference.
What's happening here, what Mr. Muhammad is actually talking about, is that the Republican Party, the GOP, et cetera, has an identity crisis. I don't think that the GOP actually know who they are, or quite frankly, who they want to be going down the road. We are looking at really two Republican parties. We have the mainstream and the extreme, and they're at war with one another.
I don't know about that.
That's just my perception.
I mean, there's a group of people. One, you would have to believe that what's happening now is a recent vintage, and it isn't. I mean, it's been out there for quite a while. There's a division in the haves and the have-nots. Mm-hmm. There's an income gap that's wide and growing. There are a lot of people that's unemployed that are looking for work. They need some government guidance in terms of growing the economy. So the division the political division that you speak about, it encompasses Democrats as well as
Oh,
Republicans.
absolutely.
And I believe these both of you are divided too, so we got to bring you back next week so you
Well-
can continue on this because our time was up for this particular segment.
Love to do
But
it.
definitely thank you, and Mr. Muhammad, thank you for coming to share with us. Definitely have you back. Lee, thank you very much. Of course,
Always
we'll
a
continue to follow all the updates coming out of Washington, D.C. You'll find them right here, and we'll break that down here on Open just about every Wednesday. We do that with Lee and our political analyst team. And so, Nasir Muhammad, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
All righty, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more show. Stay with us. We're coming right back right after this.